good afternoon. I
It's
think I
about
know most of the people
9:30. They
on this
got here
call,
about
but just in
it's
case I
about
don't know
9:30.
you, my name is Jennifer Bean. And among other things, I am the director of the High School Equivalency Office here at the North Carolina Community College System. I'm so glad that you guys are here with me today. We are doing a training today about high school equivalency, eligibility, and identification policies for the state of North Carolina. As has been mentioned in the materials leading up to today's call, we generally don't do a lot of mandatory trainings for our chief examiners or for others who work in our testing centers. Usually it's, come if you can, and we'll have a recording up and you guys can engage with that later. Today we are making this session mandatory for our chief examiners just because we, number one, have had questions about who's eligible to test, what ID folks have to present to test. Just because we've had those questions, we want to make sure that everybody has the same understanding. As we like to say at the community college system here, from Murphy to Manteo, no matter where you live in the state, we want everybody to be able to provide a uniform testing experience in terms of understanding these policies across the state. And then again, I guess that's kind of the second reason why we're asking everybody to attend this, just to make sure again everybody has a similar understanding of our policies. I want you guys to have a chance to ask questions if you need to ask questions. As you all know, we often schedule these sessions for 90 minutes instead of just an hour, because I do want to give you guys time to ask questions if you need to. I didn't put a housekeeping slide on this one, but I do just want to mention, if you have a question, please feel free to pop it in the chat. I will be checking the chat periodically throughout today's session. So if I don't get to you right away, I promise we will be stopping to take questions every now and then. If you would like to come on mic and ask your question, you are welcome to unmute yourself and ask that at those certain points during the call. I'll kind of let you guys know. I'll cue it up for you all when it's okay to come off mute and ask your question if you need to. I would ask that if you do have a question, there should be a raise hand function in the Zoom interface. It's helpful if you do that, but I will also again just give you guys a chance to come off mute on mic and ask your questions. All right. That should cover the housekeeping stuff. I'm going to go ahead and go into the content, but again, there will be chances to ask questions. So please pop those questions in the chat. You can, and again, I'll let you know, I'll cue you up as to when it's okay to unmute and ask those questions. All right. So why are we here today? The purpose of today's session is to clarify who in the state of North Carolina is eligible to take a high school equivalency exam and what documents are acceptable for testers to present as proof of identification. We just are taking some time today to say who can test and what should the tester bring. For my testing center folks, my chief examiners, this is so that you guys will be aware of this as you are taking testers, as you are accepting that identification. For my adult ed folks, because I do see adult ed folks who are on this call, I see some coordinators and directors. I definitely want to make sure that you guys know so that you can empower your students with any understanding that might assist them as they're getting ready to take a high school equivalency exam. So here's just a quick overview for the day. Pretty straightforward. We'll talk about eligibility. We'll talk about identification. In each of these cases, we're going to talk about what the policies are from our publishers, from GED and from HiSET. We will take time to differentiate between the two because there are some differences, especially when we get to identification policy. There are some differences between what GED accepts and what HiSET accepts. I didn't realize, I'll just be honest, when I was prepping for this session, I didn't realize until then that there are a few things where they differ quite a bit. So I absolutely want to make sure you guys understand what the differences are. And then also we want to make sure that you guys understand any state-specific policies here for North Carolina, because both GED and HiSET are they're pretty open to state policies. Obviously, we have to meet whatever the baseline policy is for the publisher. We can't say, "Oh, GED Testing Service said to do this," but nah, you don't have to. Can't say that for GED or for HiSET. We do need to be compliant with their policies, but if we have anything additional that we want to add as a state, we can, and I will mention those as we're going through. And then at the end, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about resources that you can utilize if you need to refer back to anything. Of course, this session will be recorded and ultimately it will be going on the professional development website however, we also want to make sure that we can go straight to the source, straight to the publisher's manual, straight to our state rule pages for GED and HiSET. So we will make sure to have those available for you at the end of the presentation. All right. So with that, let's start by talking about eligibility. So again, the purpose of this section of our session is to talk about who is eligible to take a high school equivalency test in the state of North Carolina. Again, as we mentioned a moment ago, every state has slightly different rules. So we just want to make sure you understand what the policies are here in North Carolina, both from the publishers and from our state perspective. So first, let's talk about the GED exam. Who is eligible to take the GED exam? So here are the things that GED Testing Service requires. Number one, a tester has to be at least 16 years old. We cannot accept any GED testers who are younger than 16, no matter what. Even if they come with a minor release form, even if they come having, dropped out of high school, we cannot accept anybody under the age of 16 to take the GED exam. Now, if a tester is 18 or older, they can take the exam free and clear. No need to do anything else. We'll talk about one exception in a moment here when we get to our next point. But for the most part, if a tester is 18 or older, they are free and clear to take the GED exam. For our minors under 18, our 16 and 17-year-old testers, GED Testing Service requires that minors under 18 must have documentation of consent from a parent or guardian. So a parent or guardian, a responsible adult for that minor, must provide consent before that minor can take the GED exam. We'll talk a little bit more about the minor release process for what it looks like here in North Carolina in just a few minutes. But we essentially GED Testing Service affirms what we say here in North Carolina, which is 16 and 17-year-olds must have documentation of consent before they can test. The second thing that GED Testing Service requires of a GED tester is that tester may not be currently enrolled in an accredited high school or a secondary education program of that sort. This is where there's one little exception to that minor under 18 piece. So if somebody is 18 or over and they're in high school, if the 18-year-old or older must withdraw from high school before they can take the GED exam. In North Carolina, there are no exceptions to this. We do note here on the slide that some states do have exceptions. GED has a special program for students who are still in high school to take the GED exam. A state has to opt into that program, however, and North Carolina has not opted into that program. So in the state of North Carolina, a student cannot be enrolled in high school and also take the GED exam. So if you have an 18-year-old student or a 19 or 20-year-old in an IEP who's in high school, they want to take the GED exam, it will be necessary for them to withdraw from school before they take the exam. The most recent edition of the GED manual, which, again, doing research for this, GED Testing Service has actually updated their policy manual last month. So I actually had to update some of these slides to reflect the new manual. And this is one of the things. GED Testing Service does state that if a candidate holds a secondary credential, a high school diploma, a high school equivalency credential, that candidate cannot take the GED exam. So just to kind of give an example, I have had questions before both from actual people who want to take the GED exam and also from some of you guys who've served people in the field. I have received those questions saying, hey, so-and-so has a high school diploma, but they just want to take the GED exam to see if they've still got it, I guess for lack of a better term. Can they do that? And I have had to tell the person on the phone, and I've had to tell you guys who've asked me, no, they cannot. GED does specifically state that if somebody has a high school diploma, they cannot take the exam. So it has to be somebody who does not yet have a secondary credential in hand or on their record before they can, in order to take the GED exam. The third thing that GED Testing Service requires is that that candidate be able to present valid identification when they test. We won't talk about that too much now because that's the whole second half of this session. So there's much more information to follow. We will come back to the identification piece in a short while here, but we do just want to acknowledge that the tester, the candidate, needs to be able to present valid ID in order to test in North Carolina. All right. I just want to take a moment again. As I mentioned previously, I did have to make some changes to my slides. This is one of the changes because this is a statement that GED Testing Service has in their newest edition of the manual that came out last month. And again, we will have a link to the GED's newest manual on the last slide that you guys can have access to when you guys get the slide deck later. GED Testing Service states, and this is a quote directly from the manual, jurisdictions shall ensure the GED test is available to any qualified adult in accordance with jurisdictional rules, regulations, and/or code. So essentially, we want to make sure that the GED exam is available to any eligible adult tester in the state of North Carolina. We don't have, again, with the exception of what we mentioned before in regard to being enrolled in an accredited high school. Obviously, we can't serve a person with a GED exam if they are in high school. That does go against a rule or regulation. But as long as the candidate does not fall into any of those categories that we kind of mentioned on the first slide, the GED exam is open to them. So we don't really have anything that says, oh, you fall into X category, you can't take the exam. You fall into Y category, you can't take the exam. We have to ensure that any qualified adult, anybody who is not specifically excluded by one of GED Testing Services rules or our state rules, can take the exam. So we just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So we're not turning anyone away who is eligible to take the exam. So we just want to make sure. And if you guys have any questions about that, please do feel free to ask. But again, any qualified adult is eligible to take the GED exam. Let's go into some state-specific policies for North Carolina. As you see, the word no is here a lot. In comparison with some of the other states, policies, we actually have fewer restrictions in some ways than other states do. First thing I want to mention is our minor release process. As we mentioned previously, GED Testing Service does require that a 16 or 17-year-old GED candidate have documentation of parent or guardian's consent. This is just to mention that here in North Carolina, our minor release process is completed locally. not through the state office. Some of our other states that have high school equivalency through GED, they do minor release at the state level. Everything is to run through the state office. In North Carolina, everything for minor release is completed locally. So each of your testing centers and adult education programs should have some type of a minor release form and procedure that a 16 or 17-year-old can use if they want to test. It does not run through the state office. I do get phone calls probably at least a few times a month from inquiring about this. And essentially, my response is our office does not work is not involved with the minor release process. What county do you live in? Let me see if I can connect you with a location where you will be able to complete your minor release. So that's just a note about North Carolina. We complete all of our minor release processes locally, not here at the state level. North Carolina does not have a residency requirement for taking the GED exam. Again, several other states do require that a person has residency in that state or that they've lived in that state for a certain amount of time before they can take the GED exam. North Carolina does not have that requirement. We have opted that, again, as long as a person is otherwise eligible, as long as they have valid identification with them when they present for testing, we do not require a specific state residency in order to take the GED exam here. We know that we've got folks coming down from Virginia, over from Tennessee, up from South Carolina, up from Georgia. We know we've got several large military installations in North Carolina, and folks who might be coming from different parts of the country, coming with a loved one who might be serving. So we do not have any residency requirements here in North Carolina for taking the GED exam. We don't have any preparation or instructional requirements. In North Carolina, we do not, as a state policy, I'm just going to make sure I say this, as a state policy, we do not require that candidates for the GED exam take adult education. We do not require that they have a certain score on CASAS or TABE. We don't require that they present any documentation that they've completed preparation for the GED exam. Somebody can walk off the street today, go into a testing center, and go take the GED exam. So we do not have any of those preparation or instructional requirements that the other states might have. We also don't have any practice test requirements, with one exception, which I'll go over in a minute. Again, there are places where it is required for a GED candidate to take the GED Ready practice exam and show a certain score before they can take the GED official exam. The only exception is actually not a state rule, but this is a GED Testing Service rule. If someone is going to take an online proctored exam, which in our testing centers, you guys are probably not going to see those testers because they're taking the test from home or from a private residence of some sort. But GED Testing Service does require that if somebody is going to take the online proctored exam, they have to take a GED Ready practice exam and score in the green range in order to be able to take that online proctored exam. And then finally, we in North Carolina do not have any language restrictions. If you were here with us maybe a couple years ago, if you were here with us in the past, you might remember that North Carolina did have at one time a policy that a GED or HiSET candidate had to take the entire exam in English or the entire exam in Spanish in order for it to result in a valid high school equivalency completion. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, we did do away with that policy. So we now do not have language restrictions on taking high school equivalency exams. A tester can combine sections in English and sections in Spanish. Maybe if they're comfortable taking some things in English and some other things in Spanish, those can be combined into one high school equivalency completion. So we do not require that the entire exam, we no longer require that the entire exam be taken in a single language. We can mix and match and combine languages on different sections of the exam. All right. So that's kind of our overview for GED eligibility. Let's go ahead and move over to HiSET eligibility. So who is eligible to take the HiSET exam? Um, as it states in HiSET's program policy manual, and as I confirmed with our HiSET rep, HiSET does not have publisher eligibility requirements for who may take the exam. Eligibility to test is fully determined on a state by state basis. The only thing that the manual states for HiSET is that the tester must have valid identification at the time of testing. And again, we will go over that in the second part of today's session. Because we do not have any publisher policies from HiSET about eligibility, we have chosen to mirror HiSET eligibility to the same standards as GED. So essentially, the tester has to be 16 or over. The 16 and 17-year-old testers have to go through the minor release process. The tester cannot be enrolled in secondary education or hold a valid secondary credential. And in a minute, I'm actually going to go through that word valid and talk a little bit about what that means, just to clarify. But the tester cannot hold a valid secondary credential, and they have to be able to present valid identification, as we mentioned a moment ago. So HiSET, just to keep everything uniform across the state, HiSET and GED eligibility are the same. So the same state-specific eligibility pieces that we had for GED, we have for HiSET. I won't go over them in detail again, but just a reminder, minor release is local. We don't have a residency requirement. We don't require any specific preparation or instructional requirements for students. We don't require a practice test, and we don't have a restriction on language. Before we move on, I just want to take a minute and talk a little bit about the word valid secondary completion or secondary credential or diploma. We will sometimes hear about students. I definitely saw this when I was working at the local level, and I still hear this from folks who call my office here at the state office. Sometimes we will hear from people in the public who said, "Hey, I went to Joe's totally legitimate online high school and I got my diploma, but I'm not able to use it to apply to college. I'm not able to use it to successfully obtain this job I want. Can I take the GED exam or can I take a high school equivalency exam?" In that case, the answer is yes, because the whatever diploma was earned from Joe's totally legitimate online high school ended up not being legitimate after all. The person was not able to use that credential to qualify for post-secondary education or for a workplace opportunity. So because of that, we would say that that person is eligible to take the GED exam, because we do want them to have a valid secondary credential so that they can go for that post-secondary educational opportunity, so that they can go for that job that they want. So when we talk about a valid secondary credential, essentially that means a credential that is accepted for anything that the candidate wishes to do beyond high school. If it's not going to be accepted for post-secondary or for work, we would allow that person to take the high school equivalency exams here in North Carolina. So that's kind of a quick overview of the policies for both GED and HiSET, both the publisher policies and our state policies. In a minute, I'm going to do a little test of your knowledge. But before we do, I want to go ahead and clear out any questions. I see a few things that are in the chat. So let me go through the chat and ask those questions and make sure that we get those before we move on to our examples. Blanca Cardenas says, does that include a high school diploma from a foreign country? So Blanca, that is a great question. So that kind of goes back to what we were saying about a valid a valid credential if it's valid here in the United States. We do know that sometimes that high school diploma might not be accepted in a post-secondary environment. And if that is the case, then yes, we would allow that person from another country to go ahead and take the GED exam. Often also, another case, and I'm glad you brought this up so we could discuss this. We do know that often those transcripts from other countries can be very, very expensive to translate into English or to translate over to what might be accepted for a post-secondary educational institution. That those cases are also permissible to take a high school equivalency exam because again, it's if it's cost prohibitive for that transcript to be translated into English, we would consider that as a case in which we would have the candidate go ahead and take a high school equivalency exam. Blanca, thank you for that question. That's a very good one, and we do want to mention that one. Tracy Buffalo asks, what if they have a high school diploma from a non-accredited place? We kind of hit that a moment ago, but just to reiterate, if the student cannot use that diploma to enter a post-secondary educational placement, if they cannot use it to get the job that they need, then yes, that person we would consider that not a valid credential, a secondary credential, and that person would be absolutely permitted to take a high school equivalency exam in the state of North Carolina. Great questions. Thank you guys for mentioning those. Karen Neal asks, what considerations should we have when completing a minor permission form for minors in a homeschool, which does not have a withdrawal process? Karen, I'll kind of do a quick answer on this. We might discuss this one a little bit more offline. But essentially for a student who is homeschooled, that is still considered a valid secondary placement in the state of North Carolina. So they would still need to complete a minor release form. They just might not be able to complete a part that asks about the LEA, the local educational authority, because a homeschool is not affiliated with an LEA. So if there's anything that is not applicable to their homeschool situation, they could leave that alone. However, it is still necessary for that student to have a minor release on file per GED, HiSET, and state requirements. I hope that answers your question. Guys, if I'm answering any of your questions and what I'm saying doesn't fully answer it, please feel free to ask for clarification in the chat or to come off mute and ask your question. But hopefully this is getting your answers. Cheryl Brown, if they have credentialed under GED but want to retest in a particular subject, try for a higher score or GPA, it's not okay. Cheryl, we have been informed by GED Testing Service that they do not, that's not something that they are going to have a student do. If the student has the credential, they can't go back and take the GED exam again. And that is something I have confirmed with our GED rep because we have had people ask about that in the past. And when I've asked, I've been informed that that's not something that GED Testing Service would have someone do. My understanding is, and if I am incorrect in this, I am happy to go back and correct this. But my understanding is that once a person earns that credential, what they earned at the time of credential is their transcript. That is my understanding. And again, if I find out that that's wrong, I'll make sure to go back and correct myself. But to the best of my understanding, they can't change that. My understanding is that they can't change that transcript once the credential has been earned. So the short answer, Cheryl, is no. Unfortunately, they are not able to do that. Tracy Buffalo asks, if a person attended an online school, how do we go about getting 16, 17-year-old information? So the student would need to bring in that minor release with whatever information is from their online school. That's, again, I think that might be something we could talk about since that sounds like a very specific situation. But at the very least, we would need the parent to sign the form. At the very least, if you come up on that situation, Tracy, let's get back in touch. I might need to double check on some things like about withdrawing from the school and that sort of thing. But at the very least, the parent needs to sign it and release the student to take the high school equivalency exam. Aaron Kane, what about an OCS student? Aaron, is that referring to occupational course of study student? Somebody who's got the OCS diploma from a high school?
Yes,
If
that's
it
correct.
is, Aaron, that's correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So essentially, we would go with when we say a valid high school completion, if the student cannot use that OCS diploma to enter post-secondary or to obtain a job, then yes, they could come back and take a high school equivalency exam. That's kind of our that's kind of where our line is, if that makes sense. So if they are not able to use that to go to college or to apply for college, then yes, they can come back and take the GED exam. I hope that answers your question. Cool. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that. All right, Cheryl. I had someone recently, not our student that was testing, but had already credentialed. The system evidently let them register, so I was curious. Okay, so Cheryl, thank you for mentioning that. Again, I'm going from what was given to me by GED Testing Service. And again, it might be that they're letting them test, but that the test won't appear on the updated score won't appear on their transcript. Um, Again, what was explicitly told to me was that if somebody wants to try again for a higher score, they should plan to do that before they complete the credential. Um, the other thing that kind of was mentioned about that was testing security. Don't want people exposed to the test more than they should be exposed to the test. So the person should not plan to do it. Again, I'm not going to make you guys aren't the police on that. And if it's not being enforced by GED, you know, that's that's something I'm actually going to go ahead and ask about. Cheryl, I'm going to ask our GED rep about that just to make sure. But again, I have been informed that individuals who've already taken the GED exam should not take it again or retake any sections if they've already earned that credential. But thank you for mentioning that. And I'll ask and follow up. Does that work, Cheryl? I hope so. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning it. Okay. And y'all, if just give me just a second and take that note to make sure that I'm taking this back to our rep and I will ask about it. Okay. Y'all are asking some really good questions and I appreciate that. This is why we like to have I wanted to have you guys all here with me on this and not just watch the recording later for it all possible. So thank you for those questions. Um, okay. Thank you so much, Cheryl. All right. Before we move into our next piece, any other questions? Again, y'all are asking some very good questions. All right. If you have questions, if you're typing, please continue so to do. We're going to do a quick quiz for you guys. If you want to answer in the chat, go ahead and do so, and we will just go over 3 quick scenarios. We're going to see what you remember about who is eligible to take a high school equivalency exam in the state of North Carolina, and let's see who can take it. Giving 3 cases. So, case number 1. Tester number 1 presents for testing with a New York driver's license. They mentioned they are in North Carolina for a few months to spend some time with a relative, and they are, quote, finally going to take that test while they're down here. Is this tester eligible for high school equivalency in North Carolina? Yes or no? Yes or no? I'm seeing a lot of yeses. I'm seeing a lot of yeses. Awesome. Let me give y'all just a few more seconds here. I'm seeing some yeses. Great, great, great. Okay. Oh, Jennifer Lester, thank you. Yes, if 18 or over. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much. Okay. So you guys are right. Before I move to the next slide and say why, somebody is welcome to either come off mute or to put in the chat why the tester is eligible to test in the state of North Carolina. Who would like to tell us why the tester can test? Sandra, right, you got it. They don't have to be a resident. North Carolina does not have any residency requirements for either GED or HiSET. So that person does not have to present a North Carolina ID. They don't have to have an ID with a North Carolina address on it. That New York driver's license is perfectly fine for them to take either high school equivalency exam in our state. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Student number two, tester number two comes to your office with a parent. The parent states that they are giving permission for their 14-year-old child to take the GED exam so that the child can drop out from high school and grow their following on TikTok. The parent supports the business venture, I guess. I don't know. But is this tester eligible for high school equivalency in North Carolina? Let's see what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of no's. I see Joseph Hauk mentions that they are too young. Kelly mentions must be at least 16. Yup. Kiara Pittman also mentions must be 16 years old. Y'all are all correct. Awesome. And those of you who said because they're too young, you are correct about one of the reasons that this tester is not eligible to test in North Carolina. I snuck in a second reason here. Can anyone guess what that second reason is? This is a little bit maybe not as obvious as them being 14. I can't get anything past y'all. Okay, cool. They're still in high school. And Whitney, you're right. Also, no completed release form. But everybody else, and Betsy Ruiz also mentioned that they need documentation. But I'm seeing a lot of other folks say that this student is still in school. Yes, the parent has not withdrawn their child from school yet. Student is still actively in a high school situation, so they cannot take the GED exam or the HiSET exam for that matter. If they want to grow their TikTok following, that's got to be on their own time. They still gotta be in school for a little bit there, and we want to encourage them so to continue. So awesome. Thank you guys so much. Example number 3, just to do this one. Tester number 3 is an English language learner who wants to earn a high school equivalency credential in order to further their education. You're unsure whether the student is a U.S. citizen or if they're even documented. Is this tester eligible for high school equivalency in North Carolina? Let's see what we see. All right. I'm seeing a bunch of yeses. Okay, let's see. Give everyone a little bit longer to put it in there. Whitney Hobart and Lori Vinskis, yes, thank you. Yes, with valid ID. Carol Sedgwick, no residency requirement. Yes. So you guys are all correct. This tester is eligible to test in the state of North Carolina. Again, the most recent edition of the GED manual states, as long as the tester is a, quote, qualified adult within our jurisdiction. And just to provide a little background here, when GED talks about your jurisdiction, that means your state. They are permitted to test. There is nothing that is preventing this person from testing. Again, a few of you did note this tester would need to have valid identification, and that is exactly right. And we will go into that in just a minute, what that valid identification is. But yes, you guys are exactly right. Even if they're an English language learner, no matter what their status is for this country, no matter what, they are still a qualified adult as long as they can present valid identification for testing. All right. Can't get anything past y'all. Y'all are fantastic. All right. Before we move on to identification, which again, that's the other piece of our session today, let me grab any last minute questions about eligibility. So we look like I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm just kind of scrolling the chat here for just a moment to see to see if there's any questions that came in. Okay. I don't see any questions have come in, or since our last few questions. So looks like we're good. Okay, cool. Thank you guys. All right. So with that, we're going to move from eligibility, which is, again, because especially because HiSET does not have its own eligibility policies, we keep it uniform for eligibility. We will see some divergence here when we come to identification and what's accepted for each of our publishers. I just want to, before we go into it, just let you guys know this comes from manuals, rule pages on the website. We certainly, if there's any questions, we can definitely talk about those. But I do just want to emphasize that the identification policies come from the manuals and from our state rule pages for each of our publishers. Okay. All right. Let's start with GED Testing Service. What types of identification documents can be used for the GED exam? So GED Testing Service and Pearson VUE, because remember Pearson VUE is GED Testing Service's parent company, specify the following for ID documents that are presented for testing. Identification documents must first of all be government issued. So, for example, if a student comes in with a identification card, say from like a community-based organization, something that just has their name and photo on it, something like that, unfortunately, that cannot be accepted. It has to be something that is issued by a government, state or national government. Secondly, that identification document cannot be expired. Pardon me. We cannot accept expired documentation of any sort. So even if the person says, "Hey, I'm going to the DMV tomorrow. I'm going to get my new license. Can you take this license that expired yesterday?" Unfortunately, no. We cannot accept an expired license for a high school equivalency exam. So it has to be still valid, currently valid at the time it's presented for testing. The other thing that GED Testing Service requires is that the following components must be on the identification document. It must contain the first and last name of the tester. It must have their date of birth. It has to have their signature and their photograph. Again, this is directly from the GED Program Policy Manual. All four of those components must be present on the license, or not the license, I apologize, must be present on the document in order for it to be acceptable to take the GED exam. Okay? So we just got to make sure that all four of those things are on there before we allow a tester to test. GED Testing Services Manual does specify some identification documents that are acceptable for the purposes of GED testing. So we can accept a passport. Does not specify that it has to be a U.S. passport. We can accept a passport for taking the GED exam. We can accept a driver's license or a learner's permit to take the GED exam. An identification card issued by a state or country. So you guys might be familiar, if somebody is not a driver, but they need an identification document, they can still obtain a North Carolina identification card from the DMV. So something along those lines can be accepted for GED testing. The GED Program Policy Manual also specifies that a document called the matricula, sorry if I butcher the Spanish, matricula consular, can be accepted for testing. This is a document that's issued by the Mexican government. It is an identification document for Mexican citizens who are living outside of Mexico. So if you have a tester who presents a matricula consular for testing, that can be accepted as a form of identification for GED. And then any other form of national or foreign government issued ID. Again, it goes back to needing to be government issued, but as long as it is government issued, that identification can be accepted for the GED exam. So again, this comes directly from the GED Program Policy Manual. If you, again, we're going to give that link to the manual at the end of the session. You're welcome to go there and look at the list just to confirm this, but this is what can be accepted for GED testing. Some states have maybe some parameters that might narrow some of GED Testing Services acceptable documents for identification. We do not have any state-specific additions to this. So essentially, what GED Testing Service says we can accept, we can accept. We are going directly from the publisher's policy on this. Okay. So that's what we can accept for GED testing. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, HiSET is not identical in terms of documents that can be accepted. So I want to make sure to go over this with you guys. And again, these are from the HiSET program manual and from our state policy page on HiSET. So I just want to make sure that we understand there are some differences between the two. So what types of identification documents can be used for the HiSET exam? So HiSET and PSI specify that ID documents presented for testing must. We're going to start with some similarities. Number one, be government issued. So HiSET also, sorry, going back to PSI. PSI is HiSET's parent company for those who might not be aware. So we kind of go from the testing, the test and the parent company of the test to get these requirements. So the government issued is still required for the HiSET exam. It must be a valid document, so it cannot be expired. Similar to GED, the document cannot be expired in order to accept it for HiSET testing. Here's where we start to diverge a little bit. HiSET only requires that in terms of the actual fields, I guess, on the identification document, the signature and the photograph are the two things that are required to be on the document. Actually, there's a third thing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the non-negotiables for HiSET are that the signature and photograph of the tester must be on the document. And then the last thing that HiSET states is, and so this is going back to the name, we skipped over the name kind of in that previous one because HiSET specifically states that the name that is on the identification document must fully match the tester's name at the time of registration. So let's say, for example, that somebody has recently been married. Their identification document still has the maiden name on it, but the tester registers under their married name. Unfortunately, that identification cannot be accepted for the purposes of HiSET testing. HiSET does require that the name on the registration be identical to the name on the document. So that's just something that is specified in the HiSET program manual, and I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that as you're accepting documentation for IDs. Okay, we're going to get a little bit more divergent here as we keep going. So here are some specific documents that the HiSET program manual states can be used as a document for to present for identification for testing. So we start with a passport, which is also valid for GED. What is mentioned in the HiSET manual is that along with a passport, a U.S. issued, I'm just going to make sure we say U.S. issued passport card is also an acceptable form of documentation. I'm not sure for those of you guys who might not have seen that document, along with getting a passport, there is also a passport card that a person can get if they're traveling to certain locations. I think you can use it on a cruise if you're not going too far from the US. I believe Canada, Mexico, it's valid in as well. But that can be used paired with a supplemental ID. We're actually going to talk about supplemental ID in just a minute. So we're going to put a pin in that for just a moment. But according to the manual, the HiSET manual, a passport card as well as a passport is acceptable documentation for testing. The HiSET manual also states that a U.S. driver's license, including a temporary license, can be presented for testing. So again, those two items are specified in the HiSET policy manual as being acceptable. A state or province ID card. So we don't live that close to Canada, but my guess is by stating that a province ID card is acceptable is if somebody were to be here from Ontario, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, whatever the case may be, they could present that for testing. I would ask if you do run into that situation, ask me. Let's check on that one just to make sure. But again, the manual does say a state or province ID card is acceptable. So my understanding is that would be accepted for testing. A national ID card. So that's specifically mentioned in the document, sorry, in the manual. A military ID card is specifically mentioned in the manual. It does say testing center only, however. So again, we're not going to concern ourselves too much with online proctored testing. With HiSET, that's called HiSET Test at Home. Basically, they're saying that a military ID card would not be usable for HiSET Test at Home, but you guys aren't going to really be taking ID for those testers anyway, so we're not going to spend too much time on that. And then the final thing that's mentioned in the manual is that a tribal enrollment or education card is acceptable. So again, that is specifically mentioned in the HiSET manual as something that can be accepted. So if you have a student presenting a tribal enrollment card, that could be accepted for HiSET testing. A moment ago, I asked you guys to put a pin in supplemental IDs. We're going to come back to this. The HiSET program manual states that if a full name, a photograph, or a signature are missing from a tester's primary ID document, a supplemental ID should be presented with whatever information might be missing from the first document. We're going to go back to that example of a U.S. passport card. So the U.S. passport card has a photo, has the full name, does not have the signature on it. So if the tester were to come and present that passport card for identification for testing, they would also need to bring a supplemental ID that has their signature on it. The HiSET manual states that a student ID card from a U.S.-based institution, I'm just going to specify it as a U.S.-based institution would be required here. But that student ID card can be used as a supplemental ID, but not as a primary ID. Any document that can be used as a primary ID, so anything from the previous slide, can also be used as a supplemental ID. So again, this is directly from the HiSET program manual. They do mention that it is acceptable to present a supplemental ID with the document if the document doesn't have the full name, the photograph, or the signature. Okay? So last thing I want to go into for HiSET, or actually, sorry, there's two more things I want to go into for HiSET. The next thing is this comes directly from the manual. You can find it there. I don't have the page number. I didn't think to put the page number citation here, but I do want to mention that there are some documents that HiSET manual specifically states cannot be accepted for when presented for testing. And I'm just going to admit some of these I was not aware of until I started preparing for today's session. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of this also. So HiSET specifies that the following cannot be used for identification documents. Number one, a physical or a digital copy of an ID document. If somebody lost their driver's license, but they have a picture of it on their phone, unfortunately, that cannot be used. That's not acceptable for HiSET identification. International or foreign driver's license. So when I saw this in the manual, I actually went to our rep and I asked about this. So this actually covers two different types of driver's licenses that are currently, I'm going to use the word currently because it's right now this is the case for HiSET. But currently these two types of documents are not acceptable for HiSET testing. Number one is what's called an international driver's license or an international driver's permit. This is a document that can be obtained. In my research, it looked like you can obtain it through the AAA. And it basically, certain countries will allow you to drive in that country if you have that international driver's license or international driver's permit. That document cannot be accepted for HiSET testing, according to both the manual and my conversation with our rep. The other type of document this covers, and again, I double-checked this, and I just want to make sure you guys are aware of this, because I was not aware myself until I checked on this. A foreign driver's license currently, at this moment, this time in April 17th, 2025, Currently, a foreign driver's license is not acceptable for HiSET testing. So if somebody has a driver's license from another country, at this time, it cannot be accepted for HiSET testing. I double checked this. I brought it to our rep's attention. I'm going to say that much. If this changes in the future, we will, of course, make that known. But at this present time, a foreign driver's license is not acceptable for HiSET testing. So just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Again, this was something I was not aware of until I started preparing for today's session. Some other things that cannot be accepted are a draft classification card, an international student ID. So if somebody is a student at a university in another country, they cannot bring that international student ID for as a testing identification document. No credit or debit cards. Can't bring a notarized letter or document. It has to be an actual identification document. No birth certificates, because I don't think that provides enough photographic evidence of who you are today. And no social security cards can be presented for HiSET testing. And then just a general blanket statement is also given in the manual that ID cards that do not originate from a government agency cannot be accepted. So again, going back to that example we talked about earlier, community-based organization might issue some sort of an identification document that somebody can use if they don't have a driver's license, unfortunately cannot be used for HiSET because it did not originate from a government agency. All right. Last thing I want to talk about with identification before we take a few questions, because I did see a few things come up in the chat during this previous section, and we will make sure to go back and answer those questions. But here's a couple of North Carolina specific things that we want to mention here. So currently, I'm using the word currently because we are evaluating this, and chief examiners, especially, you all might be hearing me ask about this in the not too distant future. Currently, we are allowing temporary driving certificates from the North Carolina DMV to be used if a candidate does not have a permanent driver's license in that moment. We were experiencing an issue, I think, about this time last year, where it was taking a long time to process driver's licenses for testers, and it was serving as a barrier for individuals to come test. For that reason, we were able to work with HiSET to say that that temporary driving certificate could be used in place of a permanent driver's license. Just to be clear, the expired driver's license is not acceptable. And if that temporary driving certificate is expired, that can't be used either. But currently at this time, the temporary driving certificate can be accepted in lieu of a valid permanent driver's license. Again, I'm going to be talking to chief examiners pretty soon, especially because we're kind of a year out from when we were experiencing that issue. See if that's still an issue. See if that temporary driving certificate is still something that we should plan to accept. Or if that's not something we really need to be concerned with at this time. Chief examiners will be in touch. The other thing that we state on our state policy page is, unless it is on HiSET's list of unacceptable documents. So again, we went through that list. If it's on that list, we can't accept it. HiSET says no, we're not going to, and we're not going to contradict that. But unless it is on HiSET's list of unacceptable documents, any type of national or foreign ID document can be accepted if it has the following elements. If it has the name, the date of birth, the signature, and the photograph. That kind of mirrors what we saw with GED documents. Essentially, this is meant to say that if as long as HiSET says it can't be accepted, as long as HiSET does not specify that it's unacceptable, we can take any government issued, because that's still something it still has to be government issued, any government issued foreign or national identification document, if it has those elements on it, as long as HiSET does not have it on their unacceptable list. Okay. I'm going to stop here. I see the chat lit up a little bit on this one, so we're going to stop and take some questions before we look at a few example documents and see what we can accept for GED or HiSET testing. Okay. So Dr. Kim Gregory asks, does this include the newer military IDs that do not include the signature? So Dr. Gregory, that's a good question because I actually have been asked that question. We have to abide by GED Testing Services policy. GED Testing Service says that the document has to have a signature, so it would have to have a signature in order to accept it. There are some things that we can do. I'd say if that's the only acceptable document identification documentation a person has, reach out to me. There are some ways that we can talk to Pearson VUE and maybe get things accepted on a case-by-case basis. But if the signature is not there, we can't accept it straight off for GED. Now, remember for HiSET, we said that we can accept a supplemental document, supplementary ID. So if the military ID is presented for HiSET testing, the candidate would also need to present something that had their signature on it, since that's a missing element. But Dr. Gregory, I do appreciate you asking that because I actually did receive a phone call about that once. And basically, we just had to say that we have to abide by GED Testing Services policy, because in that case, it was a GED candidate. We have to abide by GED Testing Services policy. GED states that they have to have a signature on the identification document. And so we have to abide by that. And then again in the case of HiSET, they can use that military ID, but it has to come with a supplemental ID that has the tester signature. I hope that answers your question, but thank you for asking. That's a really good question, Dr. Gregory. All right, Dr. Tyler Harvey asks, can we still accept temporary IDs? Some students are still informing us that plastic copies are taking longer to receive from the DMV. So that's good for me to know. Again, for HiSET, yes, we can. GED, we've had a very long process trying to update our state's jurisdiction sheet. So we have not been able to get that through with GED testing service yet. That's something I'm going to make sure that I can check on for GED testing service to see if we have any forward motion on changing our jurisdiction reference sheet to accept those temporary driving certificates for that. So I'm just going to make a note as well for that to check to see where we are on GED jurisdiction reference sheet. And for my guys who don't know what that is, essentially GED and Pearson VUE issue a document for every state that says, here are the state's rules for what can and cannot be accepted. Just as a point of order, the last time I checked the North Carolina reference sheet, my name was not yet on it as the director of the High School Equivalency Office, to let you guys know how in need of updating that document was at the last time I looked at it. Again, we are working through that with GED Testing Service to make sure that we can get that updated. And Dr. Harvey, thank you for mentioning that getting those permanent IDs is still proving to be a concern for some of our testers. Again, I'll ask our chief examiners kind of as a whole to see if that's still going on statewide. So Melissa, actually, I think that hopefully that answers your question for right now. Pearson VUE, we still haven't gotten that jurisdiction reference sheet through, so we cannot accept the temporary driving certificates for GED. However, with HiSET, we were able to get that through. So HiSET, we can accept it. GED, we cannot at this time until we get the jurisdiction reference sheet updated to say that we can. So that's kind of where we are with that. Blanca asks, will the name need to match the names in advances? Some students change names or do not have a second name listed on the ID or advances. So Blanca, this is, oh, sorry, Erin, yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. So Blanca, this is a good question. Advances, this is a little bit of a separate issue from, but it is still something I want to just address very briefly here as a point of order. So Blanca, essentially, in order for the student to count as a measurable skill gain in your program, yes, the names need to match. So if the student changed their name at some point, it's going to be necessary for one way or another for the first name and the last name to both match between what the tester registers as, because that's going to be what goes to diploma sender, and what's in advances. This doesn't really speak to the identification documentation specifically, but That will be important later on for your measurable skill gains. If you need to kind of go over some of that with me, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk with you guys about how to make sure that everything matches up between Advances and diploma senders so that you guys can get credit for any MSGs, any measurable skill gains that are earned by those students. But yes, that's a little separate from identification, but it is still important. And please reach out if you want to go over that in a little bit more detail. All right, Cheryl, if the license is expired, but they have a valid renewal document and they're waiting for the new permanent ID to arrive. So Cheryl, what I would say again in that case is for HiSET, they can just present the temporary driving certificate. We were able to get that approved for HiSET. We are still working through that with GED and Pearson VUE. So at this time, we would have to say no for GED. So that's just kind of where we are right now with that. We're still working for that. All right. Shannon Stanley gave an FYI, although work permits are government issued and contain a photo, the date of birth does not appear, thus not valid identification to take the GED exam. Shannon, that is correct because GED Testing Service does require a date of birth on documents. So it has to have the date of birth for GED Testing Service. Blanca asks, will HiSET accept foreign passports? Yes. So Blanca, essentially when I went through that part of the manual with our rep, basically it's just that a foreign driver's license cannot be accepted. A foreign passport is absolutely valid for testing. So please make sure that that if you have somebody who has a foreign passport, they understand that is an acceptable document for testing. And then moving into Karen Hill's question, any passport or just a U.S. passport, any passport is acceptable for both GED and HiSET. So that is what we've been able to mention based on our conversations with our reps. Carol Sedgwick actually asks a really good question. Are IDs in corrections institutions okay? Actually, Carol, I'm going to put a pin in your question because I just realized there's one more thing I want to go over in the identification document section. Kind of speaks to that, but let me put a pin in that for just a second. Thank you for that question. Mary Luz Gonzalez, if the student has an expired passport from their country of origin and there's no embassies to renew their passport, is there an exception? So Mary Luce, that is a very specific situation. I'd say contact me. And actually the thing that I'm about to mention in the next slide does speak to that as well. So let me kind of put a pin in that and talk about that in the next slide. So Mary Luce, it's a good question though. Megan Barnes, is that just for HiSET or for GED as well? So Megan, we'll go into this a little bit more when we kind of do our review. We're going to do review in a minute, just like we did for eligibility. But HiSET specifies that we cannot accept a foreign driver's license. GED does not make that explicit. GED, actually, let me go back so that I don't misquote anything here. Let me go back to the GED acceptable documents. Hang on one second. Again, I don't want to misquote anything. GED does not specify that the driver's license has to be from the US, and it also states that any other form of national or foreign government issued ID is acceptable. There is no specific prohibition on a foreign driver's license as there is with HiSET, and I'm going to the HiSET unacceptable documents list. So because that's not there for GED, we would accept the foreign driver's license for GED. Okay, Dr. Harvey, I'm glad that answered your question. Okay, Melissa, had student testers call GED customer service about complaint about being turned away, had to accept the paper copy. Okay. Okay, so Melissa, I will mention that. So basically, just to I'll go ahead and read what Melissa said. Have student test takers call GED customer service and complain about being turned away with paper temporary copy. We've had to accept the paper copy of temporary driver's license per GED customer service. So we have continued to do so when turning them away, then they call or we call, and customer service has not been consistent, which creates tense situations for my team. Melissa, I will I'll go ahead and pass that one on to our GED rep so that they know that you guys are getting inconsistent guidance. And we can see if we can figure out what is to be expected. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay. Okay. Thank you for mentioning that, Melissa, and I will take that back. Thank you. Penelope Radcliffe asks, can we get some sort of reference ID guide you can share with all this information for both HiSET and GED that we can keep at our testing centers? So Penelope, our last slide on this is going to have the links to the GED and HiSET manuals both, and the and links to our state pages for both GED and HiSET. So everything will be there. We also have a couple of other documents that we'll be linking to there that might have the information a little bit more at a glance. But let me write that down and see if that's something that we might be able to consider, maybe like a cheat sheet for IDs and eligibility. That's a good question. Might not be ready quickly, but that's definitely something we can look into. But for now, I will provide the links to the manuals and to the state ID page, the state policy pages, sorry, at the end of the presentation. So Melissa, original case number, it's been about a year, gave up and accepted it. Okay, thank you for letting me know. And again, Melissa, as I mentioned, I think about that same time period as when we started talking to GED about changing our jurisdiction reference sheet to include that temporary certificate. It's been taking a while for it to move through the approval process. But again, this reminds me to talk to our rep and see what we can do to continue that process forward. All right. Looks like we're all caught up with questions. I'm going to go ahead and do that last slide about identification, which again, mentioning corrections reminded me to go through with that. So hang on one second. Let me get to this. So I did want to make a note about re-entering citizens. So one of the things that we are involved with here at the system office is that we are partnered with North Carolina Department of Adult Corrections, and there's also a kind of bigger overall reentry initiative that's going on. So we want to really be mindful about our reentering citizens who maybe they started high school equivalency testing while they were incarcerated, maybe they didn't finish, or maybe they just need to take a high school equivalency exam because they didn't do it while they were incarcerated. So for GED, I wanted to mention, because I did have this conversation with our rep, if you become aware of a reentering citizen who wishes to test but does not have compliant ID documents, please contact the High School Equivalency Office. I'm giving you guys the High School Equivalency Office email address right here. Please use that email address to get in touch with me. We will work through the process with GED Testing Service. GED Testing Service, again, I've mentioned previously, they do have kind of procedures for if an individual doesn't have a compliant document, like case by case basis, getting some things approved. An individual who's reentering would be one of those case by case bases. Sorry. Somebody else in the comments in the chat mentioned perhaps somebody who has an expired passport but also does not have a US based driver's license or identification about that. I'd say talk to me. We'll go through and I'll take that situation to GED Testing Service and see if there's any way we can, what we can do as maybe an alternative. If there is an alternative, I'm not going to say that we will be able to provide an alternative, but at least I can talk to them and see if there is an alternative that we can do, because there is a process for doing that. HiSET, we are still researching solutions for this population. When we're able to give some updates, we will. HiSET didn't have quite the exact same processes in place for that as GED. So I'd say similarly, if somebody who is reentering, doesn't have ID for whatever reason, is going to test HiSET, we would just I would just encourage you to get in touch with me, and we'll bring that situation to HiSET and see what we can do. To go back to Carol's question about individuals who are incarcerated. So I will mention that for GED Testing Service, we don't have our prisons all use HiSET. So, however, I do know that a few of our jails use GED. Essentially, GED Testing Service in their manual states that it's not necessary to present identification. It's you should check, obviously that the person is who they say they are, but the guard essentially is the identification for that tester in GED's case. HiSET does not specify having identification for individuals who are incarcerated, who are those restricted testers. We would just give the guidance that to confirm that the person is who they say they are. If they have some sort of ID that they can use within the facility, that would be a good way to do it. If you need to speak with a guard or a coordinator or somebody, or like a case manager or something to confirm identity, that certainly is something you can do as well. However, HiSET does not have any specific guidance for testing incarcerated individuals as pertains to identification. So I would just say, just make sure if you need to double check that somebody is who they say they are, confirm that with any policies and processes that are in place at the facility. All right, so hopefully that helps with a couple of those items. We're going to go ahead and go through some examples. So just like with our eligibility requirements, we're going to go through some documents. We have blurred things or blacked things out as possible, but we're going to take a look at just a few of these items and make sure that we understand that we know what can be accepted for GED and what can be accepted for HiSET, because some of these are going to be, some of these are going to be things that can be accepted by both. Some of these items can be accepted by one or the other, and a few of these can be accepted by neither, okay? All right, so let's take a look at number one, a credit card. Can we accept a credit card for GED or for HiSET testing? Neither or both. What do we think? Okay, give it a minute. I'm seeing very consistent answers, which is encouraging. Okay. Okay. So I'm seeing no's and neithers. We're going to say both of those are correct. For this, and I'll go over the reasoning for this, because again, it can get a little complicated because we're talking about two different testing publishers and their requirements. So for GED, no, the document is not government issued. It does not contain the tester's photograph or date of birth. We do have a name and a signature, but no photograph, no date of birth. So GED cannot accept it for that reason. For HiSET, we cannot accept it because specifically they state in the HiSET manual that a credit card is an unacceptable form of identification. So for that reason, we can't accept it for HiSET. And then GED because it's not government issued and it's missing a photograph or date of birth. Awesome. All right. Document number two, a foreign passport. All right. So this is this is a blacked out Mexican passport. Let me know what you think. Can we accept the passport from Mexico or no? Or both? Actually, let's see. GED, HiSET, or both? Sorry, let me change that. Can we accept it for GED, for HiSET, or for both? Okay, I'm seeing some. Oh, good. Okay. I appreciate that y'all are thinking through this one. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of both. But I'm seeing with the caveat of as long as it's not expired. Fantastic. Yes. So we can accept the passport from Mexico for either exam as long as it is not expired. I covered up a bunch of information here, and it was hard to read the dates anyway. But thank you for mentioning that. As long as this is valid, unexpired passport, yes, this can be accepted for both GED and HiSET for the following reason. GED, yes, Actually, same reason for both. For both the GED manual and the HiSET manual explicitly state that a passport is an acceptable form of identification. So yes, you can accept that passport. And then just as a quick note about the passport, this is really the only part we need to check, the part that would have a name, date of birth, signature, and photograph. We don't need to look at anything else in the passport. Don't need to worry about visas. We don't need to worry about anything else in there. We just need to worry about if the eligibility elements are on the passport. So just want to make sure you guys are aware, we only need to check for those eligibility elements on the passport, as long as it is unexpired and government issued. All right. Document number 3, we talked about this one a couple times. We have a U.S. passport card. GED, HiSET, what do we think? Or both or neither? This one I did not black out because the person's name is Happy Traveler, and I'm pretty sure that's probably a um a sample name, but hopefully there is no Happy Traveler out there who is whose card I'm showing. I apologize to Happy Traveler if that's the case. But I did black out the date of birth. So, oh, I see some good answers. I see some good answers, and I see, let's see, I see some slightly different answers too. Okay, so I'm seeing some both. I'm seeing some supplemental ID, which is good. Okay. Oh, I'm seeing somebody say not GED. Okay, okay. Any other brave guessers or rememberers? All right, let's take a look. GED. We cannot accept the passport card for GED because it does not bear a signature. It has to, so remember for GED, we do have to have the signature, as we mentioned before with when Dr. Gregory asked about the military ID. It has to bear a signature in order for us to accept it for GED. For HiSET, yes, we can accept that passport ID. It is specifically listed as an accepted document in the manual. However, we do need a supplemental ID that contains the tester's signature. So put together the passport ID, the passport card, and whatever other ID is being presented should have what HiSET requires, which is the name, the photograph, and the signature. Okay, awesome. Thank y'all. Okay. We had a little conversation with this one. I'm sorry, guys. Foreign driver's license, number 4. And again, we did our best to block out some sensitive information here about this person, and their pictures blurred out. So, what do we say for a foreign driver's license? Specifically, this is a driver's license from Mexico. What do we say? Okay, Sandra has ventured a guess. GED, yes. HiSET, no. Whitney, HiSET, yes. Supplemental ID may be required. Laquita, only GED. Okay, any other thoughts on this one? Cheryl for GED if not expired. No for HiSET. Oh, Tracy mentions a signature. I will let you guys know I blacked out the signature. Oh, no. Actually, I do apologize. Not the signature. Signature was not one of the parts I blacked out. If we take a look underneath the person's photo, there is a signature down there. So we do have a signature on this. GED not HiSET. Okay. I think we're coming to a consensus here. So for this document, GED, yes. This is a government issued document that contains the full name, photograph, signature, and date of birth for the tester. So all of the elements that GED requires are there. We can accept this for the GED exam. For HiSET, unfortunately, the answer is no, because at this current time, a foreign driver's license is on HiSET's list of unacceptable identification documents. And again, when I double checked with our HiSET rep, that is still the case at this moment. So yes, we can accept this for GED, but no, we cannot accept this for HiSET. All right, fantastic. One more. this is an international driver's document slash permit. So taking a look at this, we had a little conversation about what this was as well. What do we think for the international driver's document slash permit? No guesses yet? I'll give you guys a minute. Okay, Sandra says GED, yes. Betsy says GED if it has a date of birth. HiSET says no. Okay. Elizabeth says no. Cheryl, HiSET, GED, yes. HiSET, no. Sandra, right. HiSET, no. Okay, let me give you guys just another moment. Diane, GED, not HiSET, and it must be valid. Okay. Okay. Let me give you guys, go ahead and move forward. Oh, sorry. I got one more came in the chat. Joseph says, no, it's expired. Good catch. Good catch. Um, just to be honest, guys, when I was looking for samples online, unfortunately, I couldn't always find things that were in date. But this one is actually no for both for the following reason. GED, no, because the document is not government issued. If we go back here, we do not have a government um, we do not have a government entity that this has been issued by. Um, Again, in my research for today's session, this is actually issued through AAA. AAA is not a government entity; it's a company. So we would not be able to accept this because it does not come from a government entity. And then for HiSET, the answer is no, because the document is specifically on their list of unacceptable identification documents. So so essentially neither GED nor HiSET is able to accept that international driver's document, international driver's permit that we have here. All right. Quite good, everybody. Quite good. All right. Before I move on to resources, any last questions about those identification documents that we've taken a look at together? Okay, let me give you guys just a moment if you have anything else. Okay. All right. Oh, I see something coming through the chat. Sandra, why is AAA issuing driver's licenses? So Sandra, this is technically it's not a driver's license. It's an international driver's permit. That's the official name that I was able to pull when I was doing my research. It is essentially a document that can be used, again, if somebody's traveling to another country, if they want to be able to drive. There are a certain number of countries that have said, yes, we will accept this as a document that can be used to drive in our country. I wasn't aware of this document really until I started researching for this session. There is some information on it about it on the Department of State's page, the U.S. Department of State, but it's not issued by the U.S. Department of State. And again, it's not really a license per se. It is an international driver's permit. I'm not fully educated on this. I don't do a lot of international traveling, so I can't give a full like rundown on what it is, how you get one. I just know you apply through AAA and you can get that. And if the other country accepts it to drive in their country, you can use to drive in that other country. So that's about the extent of my understanding and knowledge, Sandra. I'm sorry I can't give you too much more information on that. All I know is what I've just said and that it is specifically prohibited for HiSET to present as a document for testing. Good question, though. All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Seeing that we're close to time, I'm just going to go ahead and go to the resources page. When you guys receive these slides, we're going to have links to the GED program policy manual, the HiSET manual, the GED and HiSET state policy pages. Our GED rep mentioned that there is also a GED reference guide. I don't have a link to that. It is only available if you work in a GED testing center. So I'd suggest that you maybe speak with Pearson VUE or somebody through there. If you need a copy, if you are not sure who to speak to, let me know and I can ask. HiSET also provided what's called a test day checklist. This is a little bit more of a tester-facing document that they can use to make sure that they've got everything they need to test, including an acceptable identification for HiSET. So we're going to start with these. Penelope had a really good idea to maybe create a North Carolina specific eligibility and identification document. That's something I might look into doing as a reference. Again, not something I can state that we're going to have ready soon or anything, but it is something that definitely we can look into doing, and I would not be opposed to doing that for us and updating it as things change. So I did see one more thing coming through the chat. Shanae, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all being here. I'm glad it was helpful. We tried to be as concise as possible with a lot of content. If you have any other questions, I do see that we are 2 minutes past time. I'm so sorry. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to stay on with me. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your dedication to our high school equivalency testers here in North Carolina. Thank you so much. Selena, I'm glad this is helpful. Thank you for being here. Karen, thank you for being here. I will be very happy to take any questions. And if you have questions that you need to talk to me about it afterwards, thank you. Scarlett, I hope you also have a great Easter weekend. And thank you guys so much. I'm glad this was useful for everybody. Awesome. Thank you. And y'all have a if you observe Easter, if you observe the holiday, I hope you all are happy too. Thank you so much for being here.